A very good morning, students, class 7. Today, once again, we will continue our discussion and explanation of History, chapter 5. In that, we have to see a comparative study of the Khiljis and the Tughlaqs. Here, the comparative studies takes place, especially in Khilji dynasty, the work and administrations of Alauddin Khilji. And in Tughlaqs, we'll see two persons' achievements and administration, Muhammad bin Tughlaq and Firoz Shah Tughlaq. So let's go through the lesson and try to understand this chapter properly. A comparative study of the Khiljis and the Tughlaqs is basically more a study in contrast than in similarities. So let's see the first, Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin Khilji was the first Delhi Sultan to build an empire in India. He followed an aggressive but sensible foreign policy and greatly enhanced the power and prestige of the Sultanate. His successful military expeditions expanded the boundaries of the Sultanate and extended his influence south of the Vindhyas. Means he had expanded his kingdom. In the north he had conquered, and then in the south towards the Vindhyas his boundary had been extended. We have to see the foreign policy of Muhammad bin Tughlaq was highly ambitious, was unrealistic goals such as world empire and ended in dismal failure. See, he had good success, but Muhammad bin Tughlaq got, in the beginning he wanted to make a world empire, but later on he had means dismissed with the failure. He had propagated all the project brilliantly, but he had failed. Firoz Shah's policy, on the other hand, was weak and ineffective. The failure of their military expeditions sapped the energies of the Tughlaqs and eventually led to the disintegration of the huge empire established by Alauddin Khilji. Next point we have to see, that is, Alauddin was the first Sultan of Delhi to create a permanent standing army. He introduced a number of radical military reforms to make the army disciplined, efficient, and strong. Incompetent and old soldiers were dismissed and new soldiers were directly recruited by him. Means Alauddin Khilji was quite aware that old the soldiers may not execute their duties much than the young soldiers. So directly he had recruited the soldiers and made a active to the soldiers. Alauddin faced a series of rebellions by his nobles. He introduced extremely harsh rules and regulations to curb the growing power of the rich and ambitious nobles and kept them under his control. Means he has faced so many rebellions and revolted nobles and that his ambassadors or governors. So he had made a harsh rule and regulations to curb them, to settle them and choke down to them. To regain the support of hostile nobles, Firoz Shah adopted a policy of conciliation towards them. He increased their salaries and allowance, reintroduced the Ekta system and made it hereditary. The re-emergence of wealthy, powerful nobles undermined the power and positions of the Sultan. Here we see that other side we see that Firoz Shah Tughlaq had changed all the reform he had done. Yet allowance had been salary has been increased and allowance also, and he reintroduced about ekta system and made it hereditary. And he had done all the rich people and wealthy people and powerful nobles under his side. Alauddin was ruthless in enforcing his schemes. For example, under the market control policy, a shopkeeper who cheated his customer in weight would have the same weight of flesh cut off from his body. Means here we see that Alauddin Khiljis market policy had been made three market, one for the food grains and one for the expensive the commodities and one for the slaves, cattle and animals to sell and buy. And he had looked at all the things properly. Suppose the customers get less weight of the, then here to the traders he had done that cut off from the his body the flesh of the weight which one he had got less by the customers. Firoz Shah on the other hand was kind and merciful. He forgave corrupt officials and even criminals. The human aspects of his personality was evident from the numerous economic and justiciable reforms and public utility measures that he implemented for the welfare of his subject. So here see that Firoz Shah Tughlaq was a kind and merciful person and forgave to that corrupt officials and then suspected criminals which were tortured during the Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He had been that peacefully and torturing to them, but he have become a lenient. Alauddin built a strong defense system to protect his empire from the Mongols and successfully repulsed 5 Mongol raids during the early years of his reign. Muhammad bin Tughlaq, on the other hand, shifted his capital from Delhi to far away Daulatabad or Devagiri to minimize the danger of repeated Mongol attacks. Apart from the fact that Daulatabad was centrally located, it was also at a safe distance from the reach of the uh, marauding Mongols. Means Muhammad bin Tughlaq transferred his capital from Delhi to Devagiri and he renamed Daulatabad. Thought that it was centrally located, it is far from the Mongol raiders or attackers. So he had shifted his capital from Delhi to Devagiri. Alauddin was the first sultan to separate religion from politics. He challenged the authority of the ulemas and refused to allow them to interfere in the affairs of his government. To regain the support of the ulemas, Firoz Shah ruled the sultanate according to the Sharia code of religious Muslim law. Sharia is a code of the religious Muslim law and was advised and influenced by them in various administrative matters. Alauddin did not know how to read and write, but he proved to be a brilliant military general and a shrewd, far-sighted and efficient ruler. Muhammad bin Tughlaq was one of the most learned and accomplished scholars of his time, but a total failure as a general and an administrator. Means here we see both the rulers, they have efficiently ruled, all had a rebellions, but they have different measures they have took to suppress their wealthy person or the nobles, rich nobles, and their rebellions to suppress. There are a few basic similarities as well between the Khiljis and the Tughlaqs. These rulers were despotic and their authority was absolute. A command from the Sultan became the law of the land. They introduced numerous welfare schemes to improve the economic conditions of their subjects. Means these are the first similarities. Both the rulers had been introduced numerous welfare scheme to improve the economic condition. Second, similarities. They were patron of art and architecture and learning, so that they had made so many architecture, buildings, forts, etc., and they had translated from the Hindu text into Persian language, from Sanskrit to Persian language. Third, the ambitious dream of establishing a world empire was nurtured by both Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Means both wanted to establish a worldwide empire, so they had tried for that and fought and different measures they have took, and they have acquired also, and sometimes they had failed. Students, kindly go through your lesson so that you can able to understand. Thank you so much.